All right, we are live. And before we start our conversation, I will share my screen and do my normal introduction. Welcome everyone listening now and later to another female mentor conversation. Today, we're going to talk about the art of presence. And we're going to talk about women in particular and what we can do to improve our presence, get those opportunities we're looking for. So as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please help me help you and bring more and more conversations forward. So just a reminder, there's a big red subscribe button if you've never done that before. And please give us a thumbs up if you like the conversation today and find it useful. And then for future sessions, you can set reminders so that YouTube will remind you. If you do subscribe, you can also drop your questions in the chat, and I would love to hear your questions. I know my guest, Natalie, today would also really appreciate that as well. So this is brought to you by my passion project this year, Her Career Studio. It is an online coaching platform for women early in their careers or in career transition. So if you identify as one of those women or you know someone in your life that could use some group coaching, an online community that is intimate and supportive, then head over to hercareerstudio.com. All right. With that said, I am going to now have Natalie Venturi, my guest, introduce herself and talk about how she got into this space. Thank you so much for being here, Natalie. I can't wait to hear all of the gems you're going to share with us. So why don't you just start off by telling us how you got into this work and what drives you?
Thank you, Lisa. And I want to, if there are people, please invite questions. That's my first thing is like, yes, I love to have questions. And I think in particularly when we're talking about presence, to be able to, my purpose is to be of service to anyone who's listening and to be able to offer them something that will hopefully make a difference in how they show up. And so I am an executive coach and also a performance coach. It could be referred to as that. And I help people get to where they want to go, kind of sums it up. And I have a long career, different careers. I was a meeting planner for many years and also have worked in technology and business operations. And so how I got to being a coach, you could probably say I always coached even as a child. So that's one thing that what I talk about is when you're looking at your career and what you're doing in your world, I always think it's really important to go back and see what comes naturally to you. And like, is there a golden thread through what you do? So when I look back at my career, all my careers, I was a business major in college, and the golden thread has been to create beautiful and meaningful experiences. And no matter what I'm doing. So whether it was meeting planning, which I got into meeting planning after college, because I realized when I was 12 years old, I actually planned my mother's 50th birthday party, surprise. So I was always doing events and I was always planning and organizing. So kind of my career went in that way. And even in business operations, when I worked in business operations, I do a lot of organization. And another theme is I get you to where you want to go. So that's also another thread. So it kind of parlayed as a coach. It's a perfect, you could say a tagline for lack of a better phrase. But the way I actually, and then I pursued an acting career. Now, that was the scariest thing to me. But when I was doing some meeting planning, I had a very influential person in my life who said, you need to pursue a theater career. Now, that was a secret of mine that I never told anyone. And as a child, I would think, I love performing. I was very performative as a child, told to be seen and not heard. And I'm sure many people are. And I had a very big energy. So it was always shrinking to, feel. And then you tie that with a bunch of other things that happen, through childhood and experiences and traumas and things like that. So when I took my first acting class, I was living in Chicago and I was just like tipping my toe into it. And I had a really great experience with a teacher who said, you have to be very careful with your talent. She told me where to go study in Chicago. I did that. But and so obviously I was still working a regular JLB, but I never felt legitimate as an actor. And so I was very confident in my work, no matter what work I was doing, but I didn't have high self-esteem. So I think people talk about confidence, and people can be perceived as being confident, but self-esteem is something different. So I think it's really important to how can you build your self-esteem and your self-assurance. I think confidence comes from self-assurance. So when we go back to this, the art of presence, and people, they want, I have clients who come and say there's a job that is they may be middle management, and they have a job where they want it, that's an executive, but it's considered an executive. So what I did, so let me back up. So then as an actor, I started studying acting, and I moved to California, and I still never felt legitimate as an actor. I was not enough. I was too fat. I didn't look right. I just couldn't wrap my head around. I just didn't feel like legitimate. So through a series of events and listening to my intuition, I found a teacher that I studied with. And the first class that I went to, I audited his class, and he said, if you want to be an actor, you just have to commit, and I'll teach you how to be a professional actor. And I was like, well, I know how to commit, which when I use that word commit, I'm going to come back to that, because it's about virtues. So I was like, I know how to commit. And so I committed, I studied with him, and he basically said, being an actor is being a professional human being. We were on a stage in his class. And when I did a monologue, and what would happen, he said, why have you been hiding? You hide. You have this energy, who you are, how you show up, you're hiding. Why are you hiding? So that began the journey of getting comfortable with who I was and what I was. And I think this translates to anyone who is looking to, one, make a living, make a difference in the world, but do it that's in alignment with who and what they are. So from that teacher, I studied with another teacher named Sam Christensen, who he was the casting director on MASH, the television show. And I get emotional when I think of Sam. He was just a beautiful, beautiful human being who taught actors that how they were created is exactly perfect. And so when I studied with Sam, we worked on monologues, and working with Sam is what really taught me how to be comfortable in my skin, to claim exactly what I am and who I am, and make no apologies for it, and lean into it. So through that work, it was over time, and I didn't realize it was such a gradual progression, but that's what made me very, very comfortable in front of getting up, in front of doing anything. So during that time, I had an acquaintance. I actually had a coaching practice where I formalized it. And an acquaintance approached me, and she was a sales manager. And she needed to do a presentation. They made everybody do a presentation in front of the board, and everyone bombed. And they were saying, you can do it again, but their jobs really depended on it. So they were really high stakes. She approached me and she said, would you help me with my presentation? I said, absolutely. So I worked on her presentation as I would work on a script or telling a story. And, in career coaching, when, you prepare your answers, it's all about how do you tell the story? So I worked with her and helped her rearrange and her slides and how we could tell this story and how she could show up as the presenter. And when she reported back to me, she said she blew them out of the water. They all leaned in, and it was just a really exciting, and she kept her job. And so and so what I realized was everything I had learned as an actor, I could use in my coaching. And so that's how I started using what I learned as an actor in coaching executives and coaching anybody really, because people approach me for executive coaching, but then it really becomes life coaching or business coaching and things. So that's a long-winded story of if you're in a job interview, you only keep it to 90 seconds.
Love it. Oh, it's so different when you're on YouTube Live. I get
Oh
it.
yeah, it's like, oh, it's different. So
No,
that's
thank
how
you,
I
Natalie.
came. And so I really, and what it's morphed into is I do acting exercises with non-actors. And that's been an incredible, incredible experience of watching people transform. We've done it in groups on, on Zoom, and other people are watching. And it's very simple exercises. But what it's requiring is them getting in touch with their feelings, their emotions, and how they control their voice and their physicality. It is transformative. And it's so exciting. So,
Oh, I love that. We'll get into all those tips
yeah.
really soon. So 2 things you said resonated with me. One is that someone noticed you were hiding, right? And that's the theme today, especially for women, where we have been, like you mentioned, when you're a child, maybe it's how you were raised, be seen but not heard, or you need to be a nice girl, or those things that stick with us. And maybe it's even a gender bias that's going on in the boardroom. It could be all sorts of things that come up that create a meekness or a reservation of women. So I love that someone noticed that and helped you unleash your power and your presence. So I'd like for us to get into that more as we talk today, especially around women and how they can show up. And then the other thing is being an actor is being a professional human. I think that's so interesting. Would you say when people are acting out a different character versus telling their own personal story, do you see a difference there? Is it easier for people to lean in and pretend they're someone else than it is to be authentically themselves?
Yes and no. Excuse me. It can be, as an actor, when you're reading, telling a story or saying a monologue, it's about telling the truth. So people think actors are, oh, you're lying. An actor tells the truth in a scene. So, except I'm portraying someone else. So, but you're really looking at me, the actor. So in a job interview, you're being yourself and then are they going to reject me? I mean, the fear comes up. Are they going to like me? Or am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? So there's all that amygdala, all the survival brain is going on when you're in the interview. As an actor, there's also that going on, but the actor has learned when they're in front of people, you get used to being in front of people. You do have stage fright, you get nervous, but when you focus on the other person, like I'm focusing on you, it's not about me. So it's the same as a job interview. My amygdala is going off. Are they going to like me? Am I going to say the right thing? But if I go into looking at you and I'm focusing on you and I'm listening to what you're saying, then I'm in relationship with you. And when we feel an actor and we feel moved by an actor, it's because they're in relationship. The focus is off of them. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, that was a great way to put it. Just like like charisma, right? What is charisma? It's all about when that person shows interest in you and how they connect with with someone else.
Yes.
The people that we know that have the most charisma are always making us feel like we're the only one in the room.
Yeah. And to do that authentically, because a really great, I think, quality is curiosity. So I'm curious. Like, well, if you're looking at a job interview or you're like curious, well, what is this job about? What is this company about? You know,
Mhm.
what do you want from this job? Or, you know, what do you want from the person who's going to be in this job? Stay curious. And so that's putting the focus on and on the other, like the other person. So it's staying in relationship, even when you go to a cocktail party, or are there cocktail parties anymore? I don't know. But like
All
a
right.
networking, let's say networking. So you
Mhm.
go to a networking, and it's to stay curious. When we stay curious, we're asking questions to other people, and, you know, not like you're the spotlight in the interrogation room, but curious, like, what makes you tick?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
what? Yeah, go
So
ahead.
important in the job search, because when a hiring manager feels like you're not very interested in the
Mhm.
job, then they're going to move on to the person that is the most interested and passionate and engaged. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think people talk about authenticity, and what does that look like? What does that mean? I think authenticity comes from really knowing yourself and being comfortable with yourself. And if there's like one thing that Sam taught, which I thought was really brilliant, if you have a quirk, name it.
Yeah, lean
You know,
into
like
it,
lean it.
right?
It's like,
Yes.
this is, you know, who I am. And that causes that facilitates engagement, and also connection.
Hmm.
Like, we can talk about it.
Hmm.
Like, yes, I know that I have to, you know, on those spreadsheets, I need to make sure we balance this down to the penny. I know we talk in hundreds of thousands of dollars, but to me, I know I'll get there. I'm sorry, but I got to balance it to the penny. You know,
My gosh, that is hilarious. My husband is that way. He's in finance, and I always tease him. I'm like, yeah, if it's off by,
yeah.
it's not good enough. That's so true.
So, you know,
Yeah.
and then but that's a virtue of, you know, commitment to precision. You know, it's
Mhm.
really important to be precise. And in some situations, that's really helpful. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Okay, let's get into some of your recommendations. Maybe if you want to practice anything, I'm not sure what you have prepared for us today, but anything that you want to share with the audience on how they can start practicing and feel prepared in that self-esteem, build that self-esteem and confidence.
sure. Are there any questions yet?
No, I keep looking down. No, people love to listen and still do their work, I think. If there are any
No,
questions, please drop them in the chat.
so,
Yeah.
so when I talk about presence, it's really energy. Everything is energy. Would you agree with that? Like, no matter what it is,
Absolutely.
everything is energy.
Mhm.
So, and it's about your voice. There's a lot of talk, no pun intended, about women's voices.
Mhm.
And what I've observed, um, as an actor, watching actors rehearse, and also as women who are in the workforce and who are looking for jobs as my clients, being with a voice, and I have you come down from your lower belly to really resonate, have a people will get critical if you say a lower register, but I call it coming from your power center. That's your creative force.
I love that.
So when you connect to that, it is connecting to your own creative force and your life force, really. What happens when women start, or I'm going to use women for an example, or anybody really starts talking up here, and you hear, and they're all up in their nasal, and there's nothing coming from down below in their body. So when I start working with them, and we can do very simple exercises, and what happens is, because women, many women are not safe, do not feel safe in their bodies. So they are not in their body. So there are, through one, I call it go to the store and get some carrots. And it's just a phrase, it can be any phrase. And so anybody can take any phrase, and you say that phrase, and you tie an emotion to it or an action to that. And so what I do with the client is, and especially when we do this in a group, is I will have you, sometimes it depends on the person, sometimes they're moving around, but I have them get in their body. And so when you are speaking, it's to be in your body, and
Mhm.
that grounds you, and that helps you stay connected. Because when you're up here, like if I'm just talking up here and I'm moving around and I'm not really connecting and I'm not in my body, I don't really know, it's all in my head and I'm just talking and I don't know what I'm talking about. And then I might talk faster. And when we get nervous, our voices even go higher.
Mm-hmm. Even just that demonstration, you can tell, like when you're up here, it doesn't feel authentic. It feels like almost like you're talking to a baby, trying to soothe them or something, right? And
Right.
instead of with intention, like you're mentioning.
So like, and so
connection.
then we just settle in to
Mhm.
my body and I'm focusing on my lower, I'll say my abdomen, one of the lower chakras. And then you just take a breath and then you start talking. And then it's much more measured. It feels more, there's more gravitas to it.
Mhm.
And people tend to listen when you are really in your body. That's how I feel. That's been my experience. And it just it gives everything more weight.
Mhm.
And it also, I mean, it just came to me as I think it helps people relax
Mhm.
versus when I'm talking, they were like, oh, if you've ever been around horses, I don't know if you, the
Yeah. I'm in
horses,
Oregon.
yeah. So horses, if you're around a horse is always picking up what's going on. And I think as humans, we do that, but we don't realize we're doing it on some level. So when I was in the barn one time with a horse and I had a fear, and the person I was with said, the horse is picking up your fear, doesn't know you're afraid of it. But they're going, what's going on? Like, oh my God, there's something in here that we've got to be afraid of. So when somebody's talking like this and you're like, what's going on? I mean, I'm just wondering, I want to now check that out in the future when I'm hearing someone talk really high and they're really, so
that's a really interesting observation. I have had some women, maybe I'm meeting them for the first time, and they talk, in their more head voice, and also nonstop. When women don't pause, and I'm saying women, but I've also experienced it with men. When someone's doing that, you wonder, as the other person in the conversation, are they hearing me? Do they care what I have to say? Because there's no room to really say much or connect with them. And then you wonder how much they're actually observing the space. And sometimes those people are actually hyper observant, because later they'll share with me what they were observing. But it just is so off-putting, isn't it? Because as the other person supposedly in the conversation, you're wondering, do you care if I say anything in this moment?
Well, I also think that's called maybe reading the room.
Mhm.
And so, and then it's the art of listening.
Mhm.
But I think that's a really great observation. Yes, hyper awareness.
Mhm.
So, because I actually know somebody who has that quality of talking very fast and keeps going and going and going, and they are very hyper aware of what's happening. It's very
Mhm.
interesting. That's a great
Mhm.
observation.
Yeah, very interesting. And so that would be a quirk, right? So leaning in and
Yes. Uh-huh.
acknowledging that elephant in the room, letting someone know, hey, when I'm meeting someone for the first time, I might overtake the conversation. I will try to check myself, but feel free to jump in at any moment. I will not be
Yes,
offended if you interrupt me, right? Those kinds of things.
exactly. Yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
And then another is terms of physicality. One of the things, particularly when you're doing these kind of interview, if you're on an interview in a Zoom, how we were talking earlier about Amy Cuddy's power pose,
Mhm.
so if anybody hasn't read her book, it's called Presence. It's really, really good. I was telling Lisa that I just picked up a copy. I'd never read it and I started reading it. It was really, really good. So she talks about a power pose, which actually increases testosterone and feelings of your own personal power. When you're particularly in these kind of interviews on Zoom, I advise sitting in a chair that doesn't have arms, and to sit forward in the chair like you're in a tennis match, because you're just ready you're engaged and you're physically sitting in a position for engagement, versus So
Mhm.
Lisa, I'm really happy to be here today. I think it's really exciting. I've never done a YouTube live versus I'm sitting on the edge of my seat and it changes my energy. I feel more engaged with you.
Mhm.
Could you feel that difference?
Oh, yes. I'm glad you did not do the first one today.
And so what happens when we sit with arms on the chair, we tend to put
Yeah.
our arms on the chair and we're like, okay. Mhm. And then also, just the camera of doing testing, make sure you have good lighting. And so that
Mhm.
helps. So then the energy. My first acting teacher was Tom Todoroff, and he talked about something that really deeply resonates with me is that my job is to change the molecules in the room.
Mm. I love that.
And each one of us, we bring our energy into any situation we're in. So I think it's very important before we go into any type of an interview, any type of thing that is of maybe so high stakes for us or feels what is my intention? What is my intention of being here? At the end of this, how do I want to feel? How do I want my people I'm with to feel? What do I want them to take away from it? That's as important for a presentation, I believe, as it is for an interview
Mhm.
or for an audition. It's to know what my intention is and how I want to feel afterwards. So when talking about changing the molecules in the room, how I show up, I have the power to change the molecules in the room so that you feel something. There's a spark because I'm engaged, I'm excited. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about this job. Well, let me
Mhm.
tell you about a time when I did blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. People want to work with people that are eager to do the work
Mhm.
and eager to connect with their coworkers and people that they like. Mhm.
And I would like to also talk about introverts, extroverts, and ambiverts in terms of like, I don't believe in making or telling introverts that they need to be like, hey, I'm really excited to be, not be what you are not.
Mhm.
But there are ways when you're comfortable with who you are and know I'm an introvert and this is what I bring to the party and
Mhm.
be confident and self-assured in that. I think it makes a huge impact because you're being authentic to your true nature. So
Mhm.
this is not about introverts have to put on the, Tommy Toon show.
Right. Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah.
So I actually work with a lot of my clients identify as introverts or
Mhm,
ambiverts,
mhm.
and they're some of the best interviewers because they can bring that groundness to the conversation. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, and with when people are veering on that introvert spectrum, typically they think a lot before they speak. And so you feel the authenticity come
Yes,
through as long as
exactly.
they are being true to their own nature. Yeah, I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, um, and you're obviously just the physicality.
Mhm.
So I think um, when we talk about physicality, sometimes in the work that I do, people have no emotion when they're talking. So it depends on the person, but if it's to do something physical to help them get in their body and to get comfortable and to actually have more energy. So that's another thing that you can do some exercises of, even if you do jumping jacks or do push-ups against a wall, and
Mhm.
just dance. Like sometimes it's
I love
I,
it.
I have some one client who doesn't do a lot of is very like
Robotic.
I don't want to say stiff, is not very animated, I'll say, and
Mhm.
wants to be more animated. So it's just dance, like and we dance together because it frees up and it moves energy. So
Mhm.
if you're feeling stuck, yeah, you can
I
do
love
that.
that. I've got a 6-year-old at my house that loves a dance party. So if anyone needs to practice, that's great.
So
Awesome. How about facial expressions and what we're doing with our I have these eyebrows that like to dance. Do you have any tips or recommendations for yeah, facial exercises, anything like that?
Well, I think the key is recording yourself, going in, on Zoom, just record yourself, practice, talk, see what happens with your face.
Mhm.
And I highly recommend, I don't have any facial exercises in particular to do.
Just practice
Yeah,
what you
just
would want.
practice. And, like, and I'm not a believer in when you're speaking, oh, you have to do, you'll notice a lot of politicians do this, they don't point
Mhm.
because they've been coached to do this. You'll know,
Mhm.
we don't point at anybody when we're doing this. And so things can get very kind of jilted, they're like robotic. And I'm not a fan of that. I just don't, like, oh, you gesture here, or, oh, it just doesn't feel natural to me
Mhm.
personally. I think if you have an impulse to do something, like I talk with my hands,
Mhm.
so I can talk up here, I'm looking at myself over here, or because
Right.
or I can keep them down here and do my best not to move them. But it's also, why am I talking with my hands?
Mhm.
So I'm talking with my hand, I'm dissipating the energy right now. Okay. So now I want you to tell me if you can tell the difference. If I'm going to really center in my body.
Mhm.
And so when you don't really move your body, you can actually use your voice. And it gets a little uncomfortable sometimes not moving anything when you're talking.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and I can tell you what's happening to me right now is I feel like there's my eyes are going like this.
Yeah.
And if I can tell you a little exercise I did with somebody, we were go to the store and get some carrots. And I was having her do this in different ways. And she kept moving. And I'd say, no, in this, because some people need to move, but some
Mhm.
people, when they move too much. So we just did this over and over to where she wasn't blinking. I didn't want one movement except her mouth moving. Her whole body started sweating
Yeah, I bet.
because it was so unnerving to not let that energy dissipate. And there's something I would also offer this to people who are watching this. It's really, here's an exercise you can do, which ties to this of not moving your body and channeling your voice. Think about a time when you were on top of the world. I mean, nobody could stop you from doing anything. You knew, this is why I'm here. I can die now. I have fulfilled my purpose. Know exactly why I'm here. You can say anything to me, it wouldn't make a difference because I am so solid in who I am.
Mhm.
So, and I have people think about that experience. And then we do some work with that, with saying a line. Then I have you go to a different space that is not as positive. You can feel the difference in your body. It does not feel as great. What this person did, who was dissipating and sweating and all that, she was in an interview, and the man that was interviewing her, it was on a Zoom call, and he's doing this, and he said, so tell me about your leadership style. And she thought of that moment where she was on top of the world. She took a breath and she started speaking. And he did this. She knew it in the moment. She was like, it felt. So that is something I would say to practice, so that when you, and people have talked about when interviews, don't be afraid of the pause. So take a moment, go to that place and speak.
I love that. I just changed my view so we can be side by side. I have definitely felt that from people and seen that from people. Absolutely. And whenever I'm working with clients on interview prep, having them just do the tell me about yourself unencumbered, like this is not an interview, just like tell me, and then talking about what lights them up. Such a shift away from that professional XYZ, here's my tasks, here's what
Yep.
I do,
Yeah.
to, oh yeah, how did I fall in love with this work? Where did I find that passion?
Mhm.
Such a different conversation, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, pretending you're out for drinks with friends, not in an interview where you're sweating.
Right. And you're in a conversation and with somebody that's not out to get you,
Right.
which is again that amygdala that's trying to keep us safe. So,
Yeah, there's so much weight in interviews because it's our livelihood and it's such a
mhm.
stressful time when we're in a career shift or change or opportunity to advance and we want to prove ourselves.
It's a
So
very,
stressful.
very, very vulnerable experience to go through. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that when anyone is going through that, it's you feel so vulnerable. One is if you have financial pressure on top of just do they like me, but there's so much pressure that is on a candidate,
Mhm.
and I have
And then,
such compassion and empathy for that. Mhm. And be
yes,
kind to yourself.
right. And wondering if they're answering the question in the right way.
Correct.
Am I giving them the answer they're looking for? Right. Instead
Right.
of,
Right.
okay, how can I turn this into something that I feel confident and comfortable sharing that is relevant and it's authentically me versus did I give them the right answer?
Right.
Mhm.
No pun intended. Correct.
Yes. That's amazing. So like anything when we're doing self-improvement or working on our just us, right? It's all about us and how can we improve personally. Self-awareness is the first key thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Especially, I'm just thinking of this topic of presence and then hiding in plain sight. It is all about knowing yourself. And that comes with, they call, the emotional intelligence. So when you know yourself, you know when to listen and when to speak up. And then how do you speak up? So how are you showing up? Um, do you turn your camera on in meetings? All
Mhm.
meetings. Um, that's something to really look at if you when you're already in a job. Are you speaking just to speak, or are you speaking with something to say? Because I think many people have been in meetings where there are people that are just gonna, I've got to show myself that I'm here. I'm here.
Mhm.
So and it's just knowing yourself and knowing when to speak and what is it you really want to say.
Mhm.
And then who is your audience?
Yep.
So, and it's all about, and I just am a huge proponent of learning about yourself. And I think that's the discovery of and what you bring and who, and are you doing the work you really want to be doing? And looking at what work do you really want to be doing? What is your are you there? Do you want to make a difference in the world? Do you just, how much money do you need? Is this a job just to get you to the next step? I think it's just knowing where you are and what you want to get and where
Mhm.
you want to go.
Mhm. Yeah. So working with someone who is a personal advocate or mentor or a coach, like the work we do, and having someone hold that space for you and give you that accountability framework and feedback, right? I have so many people that I talk to that, well, I think maybe I need a coach because, my family is so great and they're so supportive, but I don't feel like I'm getting authentic feedback from them.
Right. Exactly.
Mhm. Yeah. So getting that feedback, having someone hold that space and practicing. I'm same with you. My athletic background and coaching is this replay is so important to be able to record yourself, watch the replay, see what you can adapt and change. And that's
Hmm.
that first awareness piece. I think a lot of
Hmm.
people, even in this state of everything being online, a lot of people are still not doing that. They're not watching it back or recording and watching it back.
Watching themselves
Mhm.
back.
Yep. They're in all of these virtual meetings, but there's no record button or going back and actually taking the time to do that work and watching themselves.
It's not easy to watch yourself.
It's very true.
Very, very, and acknowledge that it's not easy to watch yourself. And I think having a coach is really important. And that's not a sales pitch. That is, I use coaches. I think what they provide is an opportunity for growth and just to be able to help you with help you get to where you want to go and give you candid feedback in a very kind and encouraging way. So,
Yep. And very unbiased, right? They don't have an agenda or trying
correct.
to push you in one way or the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think also, even when you surround yourself with your peers and your people, is who has agendas for you, or their hidden agendas and things. Yeah.
You're right. Yep.
It's like, bye-bye.
Right. Exactly.
So, and your last name is Virtue. And so if I would love to just bring something up that I do with all my clients is I really believe virtues help us connect with each other. And when we speak in the language of virtues and acknowledging the virtues we see in others. So there's an app that I have my clients get. It's Virtues. I can't remember what it's called. Oh, it's terrible.
Oh, I'm going to have to look this up.
Yeah. And so it is, it's actually called Virtues Cards.
Oh.
So it's a wonderful tool that you identify your core virtues. Like one of mine is enthusiasm. And I just am naturally enthusiastic. And so I kind of was born with that quality. So I think when we can talk in the language of virtues, and I think when you're telling your stories and you're talking about yourself, it's really helpful to speak about yourself in the language of virtues, of what you bring: commitment, integrity, honesty.
I love that.
Excellence, a commitment to excellence. So that's a great app. And it's on the front and the back of each card. And I love working with those. And you can do a virtues pick every day and what you want to focus on. But I think that may be very helpful for people to work with as how they're going to show up.
I love that. So grounding in our bodies and also in our values.
Yes, I would say, and virtues, because values are not always virtues.
Nice clarification.
Yeah, there's a difference between values and virtues.
I love that.
Values are something you hold important to you. Virtues are what you are as your character.
Great. I love the tip. I think I found it. I'll definitely look into that. Amazing. Well, we're coming to the end of our session today. Natalie, thank you so much. Of course, nobody dropped anything in chat. That's okay. They probably have a lot of good takeaways, and a lot of people will watch this after it's live. So for anyone watching that is interested in getting in touch with you, let me share my screen one more time to make sure that. One second. There we go. Okay, I'm going to do this really fast. Apologies, everyone. My website is lisavirtuecoaching.com. Feel free to book a call on my site if you're interested in talking about that job search. Oh, that was weird. Okay, let me do this. Did you even see your website on there?
I saw it for a blip, but they can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yep. NatalieVenturi.com. And yes, LinkedIn also. So Natalie Venturi. So awesome.
Great. Thank you so much. I
Thank
really,
you
really
so much,
appreciate the
Natalie.
invitation, Lisa, to be able to share. And I hope whatever I offered was helpful.
Absolutely. I know it's helping me. So
Oh, great.
if nothing else.
It was a pleasure.
Yes, pleasure to be with you as well. And thank you so much for your time. It's so precious. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. And we will see everybody on LinkedIn and on our websites.
Bye-bye.